Amara Johnson was no ordinary teenager. At just 17 years old, she carried dreams that stretched far beyond the skies above her small hometown. Born and raised in a modest neighborhood by her hardworking single mother, Amara had always been drawn to stories of adventure and exploration. But what truly sparked her passion for aviation was an old, worn-out textbook left behind by her late father, a pilot who had inspired countless lives before his untimely passing when Amara was only 6 years old. The faded pages of that book became her treasure, filled with diagrams of airplanes, maps of flight routes, and tales of daring pilots who conquered the skies. From a young age, Amara would sit cross-legged on the floor of their tiny living room, flipping through the textbook while her mother worked late shifts as a nurse. Her fascination with flying grew stronger every time she heard planes roaring overhead or watched documentaries about aviation pioneers like Amelia Earhart and Bessie Coleman, the first black woman to earn a pilot's license. These stories ignited something deep within Amara, the desire not just to fly but to build something meaningful out of thin air. By the time she entered high school, Amara had already mapped out her future. She wasn't content with simply dreaming. She wanted to create. During lunch breaks, instead of gossiping with friends, she sketched designs for airplanes in her notebook. After school, she took up part-time jobs, first at a local cafe, then babysitting, to save money for her ambitious goal. Every dollar earned went into a special jar labeled Skyward Dreams, named after the airline company she hoped to one day own. Her classmates often teased her about these grand plans, calling them unrealistic or too big for someone so young. But Amara didn't let their words discourage her. If anything, it fueled her determination even more. Her breakthrough came during her junior year when she participated in a regional entrepreneurship competition. Armed with nothing but her sketches, research, and sheer confidence, Amara pitched her idea for Skyward Dreams, an affordable regional charter service aimed at connecting smaller towns and underserved communities. To everyone's surprise, including her own, she won first place, earning a modest cash prize and mentorship from a retired airline executive. This victory gave her the validation she needed to move forward, proving to herself and others that her dream wasn't as impossible as it seemed. With the prize money and some additional savings, Amara leased 2 small planes and began operations under the Skyward Dreams banner. It wasn't glamorous work. She juggled everything from booking flights to cleaning cabins, but she loved every moment of it. Her mother, though initially worried about her daughter taking on such a massive responsibility, couldn't help but feel proud watching Amara navigate challenges with resilience and grace. Together, they celebrated each milestone, no matter how small, knowing that every step brought them closer to making history. On this particular morning, Amara woke up excited, yet nervous. Today marked the launch of a new route between 2 nearby cities, and she decided to personally oversee the operation. Though she could have sat comfortably in the cockpit or lounged in first class, Amara chose to board as a regular passenger dressed casually in jeans and a hoodie. She wanted to experience the flight from the perspective of her customers, to see firsthand how her team handled things and ensure everything ran smoothly. Little did she know, this decision would lead to an unexpected turn of events. As Amara stepped onto the plane, greeting passengers with a warm smile, she felt a sense of pride swelling inside her chest. This was her creation, her vision brought to life. She found her seat near the back of the cabin, tucked away where she could observe without drawing attention. Pulling out her phone, she opened her email app, reviewing last-minute details and responding to messages from her assistant. For now, she was just another traveler blending into the crowd, unaware that her presence and identity would soon become the center of controversy. The hum of engines starting signaled the beginning of the journey. Outside the window, clouds drifted lazily across the horizon, painting a picture-perfect scene. Yet inside the cabin, tensions simmered beneath the surface, waiting to boil over. Amara remained oblivious to the storm brewing around her, focused, instead, on the endless possibilities ahead. What started as an ordinary flight was about to transform into a defining chapter of her life, one that would test her patience, challenge her values, and ultimately propel her dream further than she ever imagined. As the plane taxied down the runway and lifted gracefully into the sky, Amara settled into her seat, feeling a mix of excitement and relief. The flight was off to a smooth start, and she took a moment to appreciate how far she'd come. Just a few years ago, Skyward Dreams had been nothing more than an idea scribbled in her notebook. Now here she was overseeing one of her own flights, watching passengers chat, read, or gaze out the windows at the endless expanse of blue above them. For a brief moment, everything felt perfect, but perfection is often fleeting. Amara noticed. The flight attendant assigned to her section, a middle-aged woman named Claire, moving briskly up and down the aisle, handing out snacks and drinks with practiced efficiency. She seemed polite enough to most passengers, offering smiles and cheerful greetings as she worked. However, when Claire approached Amara's row, something shifted. Her demeanor changed ever so slightly, though it was enough for Amara to pick up on it. Instead of the warm smile she gave others, Claire's expression turned colder, almost scrutinizing, as if trying to figure out why someone like Amara was sitting there. "Excuse me," Amara said softly, raising her hand just enough to catch Claire's attention. "Do you happen to have any extra blankets? It's a bit chilly back here." Claire paused, glancing down at Amara with an unreadable look. For a second, Amara thought maybe she hadn't heard her properly. But then Claire spoke, her tone clipped and dismissive. "I'm sorry, but we reserve those for paying customers," she replied, her voice carrying a hint of irritation. Amara blinked, taken aback by the response. She wasn't sure whether to laugh or feel insulted. Of course, she was a paying customer. She owned the airline. Still, she didn't want to cause a scene, especially not while surrounded by passengers who might recognize her. Keeping her composure, she nodded politely and said, "No problem. Thank you anyway." Claire lingered for a moment longer, her eyes scanning Amara's casual outfit, a hoodie and jeans, as if searching for some hidden clue about who this teenager really was. Then, without another word, she moved on to assist other passengers. Amara sighed quietly, deciding to let it go. Maybe Claire was just having a bad day, she thought. After all, working as a flight attendant wasn't easy, and people could sometimes snap under pressure. Shrugging it off, Amara pulled out her phone again, focusing on answering emails related to Skyward Dreams. But that wasn't the end of it. About halfway through the flight, Claire returned to Amara's section, this time with a different attitude altogether. As she passed by, she noticed Amara typing furiously on her phone, her fingers moving quickly across the screen. Curiosity, or perhaps suspicion, got the better of Claire, and she stopped abruptly, leaning over to get a closer look. What she saw made her frown deepen. On Amara's screen were official-looking documents complete with logos and schedules clearly tied to Skyward Dreams. "Excuse me," Claire said sharply, interrupting Amara mid-sentence. "What exactly are you doing?" Amara looked up, startled by the sudden intrusion. "Oh, I'm just going over some work stuff," she explained calmly, holding up her phone. "It's important." Claire crossed her arms, her posture stiffening. "Work stuff?" she repeated, skepticism dripping from her voice. "This is a commercial flight, miss. You can't conduct business here unless you're authorized." Amara blinked again, confusion washing over her face. "I assure you it's fine. I don't care what you're doing," Claire interrupted, her tone growing louder now, drawing the attention of nearby passengers. "If you're trying to scam this airline or impersonate someone, I won't tolerate it." The accusation hit Amara like a punch to the gut. Scam? Impersonate? She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could anyone think she was trying to deceive anyone? Before she could respond, Claire spun around and marched toward the front of the plane, muttering something under her breath about calling security once they landed. For the rest of the flight, Amara sat quietly, her mind racing. She replayed the interaction over and over, trying to understand where things had gone wrong. Was it because of how she was dressed? Because she looked younger than most business travelers? Or was it something else entirely? Whatever the reason, one thing was clear. Claire had jumped to conclusions without bothering to ask questions or verify facts. And now, thanks to those assumptions, Amara found herself in an uncomfortable and potentially embarrassing situation. Around her, passengers whispered amongst themselves, curious about the exchange they'd witnessed. Some shot sympathetic glances in Amara's direction, while others seemed unsure of what to make of the situation. A young man seated across the aisle leaned over and whispered, "Hey, are you okay?" That seemed intense. Amara forced a small smile, grateful for the concern. "Yeah, I'll be fine," she replied softly. "Just a misunderstanding, I guess." Still, as the plane descended toward its destination, Amara couldn't shake the uneasy feeling settling in her chest. She knew that misunderstandings happened. All the time, it was part of life. But this felt different. This wasn't just about being accused of something ridiculous. It was about being judged based on appearances rather than actions. It was about being treated unfairly simply because someone decided to assume the worst. When the wheels touched down on the runway, the usual applause from passengers was absent. The atmosphere inside the cabin felt heavier, charged with tension. As the seatbelt sign switched off and people began gathering their belongings, Amara braced herself for whatever came next. She could see two uniformed security officers waiting near the gate, their presence confirming Claire's earlier threat. Taking a deep breath, Amara reminded herself to stay calm. No matter what happened, she wouldn't let this incident define her or overshadow the incredible journey she'd embarked upon. Little did she know, the drama was only beginning, and the truth would soon shine brighter than anyone expected. As the plane came to a gentle stop at the gate, Amara took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was about to happen. The hum of engines faded into silence, replaced by the familiar sounds of passengers shuffling in their seats, unfastening seatbelts and pulling luggage from overhead compartments. Outside the window, two uniformed security officers stood waiting, their presence impossible to ignore. It was clear they weren't there for routine checks or standard procedures. They were there because of her. Amara's heart sank as she watched other passengers disembark one by one, some throwing curious glances over their shoulders while others whispered among themselves. She could hear snippets of conversations. "What's going on? Did something happen on the flight? That girl looked so young." Each word felt like another weight pressing down on her shoulders. For a moment, she considered slipping out quietly, blending into the crowd before anyone noticed. But then she remembered who she was. Not just a teenager, but the founder and CEO of Skyward Dreams. Running away wasn't an option. She had built this company from scratch, faced countless challenges along the way, and wasn't about to let fear dictate her actions now. Claire, the flight attendant, wasted no time pointing her out. As soon as most passengers had exited the plane, she approached the security officers with purposeful strides, her expression a mix of confidence and vindication. "That's her," Claire said firmly, gesturing toward Amara. "She was acting suspiciously during the flight. I think you should check her documents." Amara remained seated, clutching her phone and notebook tightly in her lap. She didn't want to look confrontational, but she also refused to show weakness. When the officers finally made their way to her row, she stood up slowly, meeting their gazes with quiet composure. One of them, a tall man with kind eyes, but a stern demeanor, addressed her directly. "Miss, we need you to step aside with us for a moment. There's been a report about your behavior on this flight." Amara nodded, though her stomach churned with frustration and disbelief. "Of course," she said evenly, keeping her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I'll cooperate fully." Passengers lingered near the exit, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of what was unfolding. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene without hesitation. In today's world, moments like these often went viral within minutes, and Amara knew this incident might very well end up plastered across social media. While part of her dreaded the thought of becoming the center of attention, another part couldn't help but feel a flicker of determination. If people were going to talk about her, she wanted them to know the truth, not just half-baked assumptions, based on appearances. Standing near the gate, surrounded by curious onlookers and the watchful eyes of the security team, Amara listened patiently as Claire recounted her version of events. She kept typing on her phone, looking at official documents, Claire explained, her tone laced with accusation. And when I asked her about it, she got defensive. I honestly think she's trying to pull some kind of scam. The second officer, a woman with sharp features and a no-nonsense attitude, turned to Amara. Is that true? Do you have any explanation for this? Amara exhaled slowly, choosing her words carefully. Yes, I do, she began, her voice calm but firm. Those documents are related to my airline, Skyward Dreams. I'm not a passenger in the traditional sense. I'm the owner of this company. Everything I was doing on that flight was legitimate work. For a split second, there was silence. Even Claire seemed momentarily stunned, though she quickly masked her surprise with skepticism. Owner? She echoed, raising an eyebrow. You expect us to believe that? Before Amara could respond, one of the officers stepped forward, holding up a hand to pause the conversation. Let's verify this, he suggested, his tone more neutral now. Do you have any identification or proof that supports your claim? Amara nodded, reaching into her bag to retrieve her ID badge and a folder containing official company paperwork. She handed them over, watching as the officers examined the documents closely. Meanwhile, Claire hovered nearby, visibly uneasy. Passengers continued to film and whisper, their murmurs growing louder as the situation unfolded. Someone shouted from the crowd, "Come on, leave her alone." Another chimed in, "Yeah, she doesn't look like a criminal." Despite the mounting tension, Amara remained composed. She understood why the officers were doing their job. It was important to investigate claims thoroughly, but she couldn't shake the unfairness of the entire ordeal. Here she was, a young black entrepreneur, working tirelessly to build something meaningful, and yet she was being treated as if she didn't belong. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had poured her soul into creating an airline that welcomed everyone, regardless of background or appearance, only to face judgment herself. After several tense minutes, the officers exchanged glances, their expressions softening slightly. Everything seems to check out, the male officer said finally, handing the documents back to Amara. It appears you are indeed the owner of this airline. Relief washed over Amara, but she didn't allow herself to celebrate just yet. Turning to Claire, she spoke directly, her tone measured but tinged with emotion. I appreciate that you're trying to do your job and keep everyone safe, she said. But I hope this experience shows how easy it is to make assumptions based on appearances. I'm here to serve our passengers and ensure their comfort, not to cause trouble. Claire looked away, clearly embarrassed. Her cheeks flushed red as she mumbled an apology, though it lacked conviction. Amara chose not to press further. Instead, she addressed the crowd of onlookers, many of whom were still filming or cheering in support. Thank you all for standing by me, she said warmly, offering a small smile. This has been unexpected, to say the least. But I want to remind everyone that kindness and understanding go a long way. Let's focus on lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down. Her words seemed to resonate with the audience. Applause broke out, echoing through the terminal as passengers clapped and cheered for the young woman who had handled the situation with grace and dignity. Even the security officers offered nods of respect, acknowledging her poise under pressure. The commotion began to die down and passengers resumed their journeys. Amara took a moment to collect her thoughts. The incident had left her shaken but also resolved. She realized that this wasn't just about her, it was about the bigger picture. Bias and prejudice existed everywhere, even in places where people least expected it. But instead of letting anger consume her, Amara decided to use this moment as an opportunity to spark change. After all, every challenge presented a chance to grow, and she intended to rise above this one, just as she had risen above every obstacle before. Little did she know, this was only the beginning of a much larger conversation, one that would inspire countless others and solidify her place as a trailblazer in the aviation industry. By the time the crowd dispersed and the officers gave Amara the green light to leave, her name and her story had already begun spreading like wildfire. Passengers who had filmed the incident uploaded their videos online, adding captions like, Teen owner of airline mistakenly accused by flight attendant, or young entrepreneur shows grace under fire. Within hours, social media platforms were buzzing with reactions. Some praised Amara for her composure and professionalism, while others condemned Claire's actions as a glaring example of bias and racial profiling. News outlets picked up the story, turning what started as a routine flight into a national conversation about prejudice, stereotypes, and accountability. For Amara, the aftermath was overwhelming, but not entirely surprising. She had always known that being a young black woman in a predominantly white, male-dominated industry would come with its share of challenges, but she never imagined her own company's staff might treat her so unfairly. As she sat in the quiet corner of an airport cafe sipping a cup of tea to calm her nerves, her phone buzzed incessantly with notifications. Messages poured in from friends, family, mentors, and even strangers offering support, encouragement, and admiration. Amidst the chaos, one message stood out, a call from her assistant Marcus. "Amara, are you okay?" Marcus asked the moment she answered. His voice was laced with concern, though there was also a hint of excitement beneath it. "I've been getting calls left and right about what happened on the flight. Everyone's talking about it." Amara sighed, leaning back in her chair. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, though her tone betrayed the exhaustion she felt. It was, frustrating to say the least. But I didn't want to escalate things. I just wanted to handle it calmly. Marcus chuckled softly, clearly proud of how she'd handled herself. "Well, you did more than handle it. You turned this into something bigger than yourself. People are inspired by you, Amara. They're seeing someone who represents resilience and grace under pressure. That's powerful." Amara couldn't help but smile at his words. While part of her appreciated the validation, another part worried about the attention. She hadn't sought fame or recognition. All she'd ever wanted was to build a successful airline that made travel accessible to everyone. Now her personal life and her company were thrust into the spotlight, and she needed to figure out how to navigate this new reality without losing sight of her mission. The next morning, Amara woke up to find her face plastered across news, websites, and television segments. Journalists clamored for interviews, eager to hear her side of the story. At first, she hesitated. Talking publicly about what happened meant reliving the humiliation and frustration all over again. But then she remembered why she started Skyward Dreams in the first place: to create opportunities for people who often felt overlooked or dismissed. If sharing her experience could shed light on larger issues of bias and discrimination, then maybe it was worth it. Her first interview aired live on a popular morning talk show. Dressed in a crisp blazer and jeans, the same outfit she wore when pitching her business idea years ago, Amara walked onto the set with confidence. The host greeted her warmly, introducing her as the inspiring teen CEO whose poise during a tense situation has captured hearts worldwide. Cameras flashed as Amara took her seat, smiling graciously despite the nerves fluttering in her stomach. When asked about the incident, Amara didn't shy away from addressing the uncomfortable truths. "What happened on that flight wasn't just about me," she explained, her voice steady and thoughtful. "It highlighted a much bigger issue that affects so many people every day, judging others based on appearances rather than facts. As someone who's worked hard to break barriers in aviation, I know firsthand how harmful assumptions can be. They don't just hurt individuals, they hold entire communities back." Her words resonated deeply with viewers. Social media lit up once again, this time with hashtags like #StandWithAmara and Bias in Aviation, trending alongside discussions about systemic racism and implicit bias. Many shared their own stories of being misjudged or mistreated because of their age, race, gender, or socioeconomic status. Others praised Amara for using her platform to advocate for change instead of harboring resentment toward Claire or the airline staff. Meanwhile, Claire herself reached out to Amara privately, sending a heartfelt apology letter through her supervisor. In it, she admitted to making snap judgments based on Amara's casual attire and youthful appearance, acknowledging that her actions were wrong and rooted in unconscious bias. "I am truly sorry for the way I treated you," Claire wrote. "I hope you can forgive me. and I'd love the chance to learn from this experience." To Claire's surprise and relief, Amara responded with understanding and compassion. "Thank you for reaching out," she wrote back. "I accept your apology, and I believe we can both grow from this. What matters most is that we use moments like these to reflect and make positive changes, not just for ourselves but for others too." Inspired by Claire's willingness to take responsibility, Amara decided to take things a step further. She announced plans to implement mandatory sensitivity training programs for all Skyward Dreams employees, focusing on topics like racial bias, inclusivity, and customer service. Additionally, she partnered with organizations dedicated to promoting diversity in aviation, inviting experts to lead workshops and seminars for her team. When Claire expressed interest in participating, Amara welcomed her involvement wholeheartedly, emphasizing the importance of learning and growth. As days turned into weeks, the ripple effects of the incident continued to unfold. Skyward Dreams saw a surge in bookings, with passengers eager to support a company led by such a remarkable young entrepreneur. Local businesses offered partnerships, and investors approached Amara with proposals to expand her fleet and routes. Through it all, Amara remained grounded, reminding herself that success wasn't measured by headlines or profits, but by the impact she made on people's lives. One evening, as she sat at her desk reviewing plans for the upcoming training sessions, Amara reflected on everything that had transpired. What began as a humiliating encounter had transformed into an opportunity to drive meaningful change, not just within her company, but across the industry as a whole. Though the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, she felt ready to face whatever came next. After all, every challenge was simply another stepping stone toward achieving her dream of creating a world where everyone, regardless of background, could soar to new heights, and soar she would, with courage, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to lifting others along the way. The weeks following the incident were a whirlwind for Amara. Her story had gone viral, sparking conversations not only about racial bias, but also about the importance of representation and inclusivity in every industry. News outlets couldn't get enough of her. She was invited to speak at conferences, interviewed by major networks, and even featured in magazines as one of the young leaders changing the world. While the attention was overwhelming, Amara embraced it as an opportunity to amplify her message. She knew that her voice carried weight now, and she intended to use it wisely. One of her first priorities was implementing the sensitivity training program she'd announced shortly after the incident. Amara worked closely with diversity consultants and aviation experts to design a curriculum tailored specifically for Skyward Dreams employees. The goal wasn't just to educate staff on avoiding bias, but to foster a culture of empathy, respect, and understanding. Each session began with a personal video message from Amara herself, where she shared her own experiences growing up as a Black woman in a field dominated by stereotypes. "We're here to serve our passengers," she said in the video. "But, more importantly, we're here to make them feel valued, seen, and respected. That starts with how we treat each other." Claire, the flight attendant who had initially called security on Amara, became one of the most active participants in the training program. At first, she hesitated, unsure if she deserved a second chance after her mistake, but Amara encouraged her, emphasizing that growth came from learning, not perfection. During one particularly powerful session, Claire stood before her colleagues and shared her side of the story. "I let my assumptions cloud my judgment," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I judged someone based on what they looked like instead of taking the time to understand who they really were. And I'm so sorry for that." Her honesty resonated deeply with the group, prompting others to reflect on their own biases and behaviors. By the end of the session, many attendees approached Claire to thank her for her vulnerability, while others expressed gratitude toward Amara for creating such a safe space for these conversations. It was clear that the training wasn't just changing policies, it was transforming mindsets. Beyond the internal changes within Skyward Dreams, Amara's influence extended far beyond her company. She partnered with organizations dedicated to increasing diversity in aviation, sponsoring scholarships for underrepresented youth interested in pursuing careers in the industry. One of these initiatives, called Wings of Opportunity, provided mentorship programs, internships, and financial aid to students from marginalized communities. Amara visited schools and community centers across the country, sharing her journey and encouraging young people to dream big. "When I was your age, I didn't see many people who looked like me in this industry," she told a group of high school students during one visit. "But that doesn't mean you can't be the first or the next to break barriers. Your dreams are valid no matter how impossible they might seem." Her words inspired countless individuals, including a 14-year-old girl named Maya who dreamed of becoming a pilot. After hearing Amara speak at her school, Maya reached out to thank her, saying, "You made me believe that I can do this too. Seeing someone like you succeed gives me hope." Amara responded by inviting Maya to shadow her at Skyward Dreams headquarters, giving the teenager a behind-the-scenes look at running an airline. For Maya, it was a life-changing experience, one that reinforced her determination to chase her ambitions. While Amara poured her energy into advocacy work, Skyward Dreams continued to flourish. Public support for the airline skyrocketed, with customers praising its commitment to inclusivity and customer care. Passengers frequently left reviews highlighting the warmth and professionalism of the staff, crediting the new training programs for the improved service. Investors took notice as well, offering funding to expand operations and add more routes. Within months, Skyward Dreams went from operating 2 small planes to managing a fleet of 6, connecting cities that larger airlines often overlooked. Despite the rapid growth, Amara remained steadfast in her values. She ensured that every decision aligned with her vision of making travel accessible and enjoyable for everyone, whether it was offering discounted tickets to low-income families or partnering with local businesses to promote tourism. Amara prioritized community over profit. Her leadership style earned admiration not only from her team, but also from industry veterans who once doubted her ability to succeed. Amara's mother, watching her daughter navigate this incredible journey, couldn't help but feel immense pride. On one quiet evening, as they sat together on the porch of their childhood home, she placed a hand on Amara's shoulder. "You've come so far," she said softly. "Your father would be so proud of everything you've accomplished." Amara smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion. "I wish he could see it," she replied. "But I know he's with me in spirit. Every time I face a challenge, I think about all the lessons he taught me, about perseverance, kindness, and believing in yourself. This airline isn't just mine, it's his legacy too." As the months passed, Amara found herself reflecting more on the lessons she'd learned through the ordeal. The incident on the plane had been painful, yes, but it had also been transformative. It reminded her of the power of grace, even in the face of injustice, and the importance of using one's platform to create positive change. Rather than letting bitterness take root, she chose forgiveness and education as tools for healing. In doing so, she not only strengthened her company, but also inspired those around her to strive for better. By the time her high school graduation rolled around, Amara was already being hailed as a trailblazer in the aviation world. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, the audience erupted into applause, many holding signs that read, "Skyward Dreams Forever." Friends, family, teachers, and even strangers cheered for the young woman who had turned adversity into opportunity. When asked to deliver the valedictorian speech, Amara seized the moment to leave her peers with a lasting message. "Life is unpredictable," she began, standing confidently at the podium. "There will be moments when things don't go according to plan, when people doubt you, judge you, or try to hold you back. But remember this: challenges are not roadblocks. They're stepping stones. They teach us resilience, humility, and the value of staying true to ourselves. No matter where your path takes you, always lead with kindness, integrity, and purpose, because when you lift others up, you rise higher than you ever thought possible." Her words brought tears to the eyes of many, including her mother, who clapped louder than anyone else. For Amara, the speech wasn't just a culmination of her academic achievements, it was a testament to the journey she'd embarked upon since childhood. From sketching airplane designs in her notebook to building a thriving airline, she had proven that no dream was too big if pursued with passion and determination. As the ceremony concluded, and graduates tossed their caps into the air, Amara felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Yet she knew this was only the beginning. The sky was no longer the limit. It was merely the starting point. With a heart full of gratitude and a mind brimming with ideas, she prepared to take skyward dreams to even greater heights, proving once again that success isn't measured by how high you fly, but by how many lives you touch along the way. The years that followed Amara's high school graduation were nothing short of extraordinary. What had started as a small, scrappy charter airline operating out of regional airports grew into a thriving enterprise with roots spanning multiple states and partnerships with major carriers. Skyward Dreams became synonymous with innovation, inclusivity, and exceptional customer service, a testament to the vision and values its young founder had poured into every aspect of the business. But for Amara, success wasn't defined by profit margins or fleet sizes. It was measured by the lives she touched and the barriers she helped dismantle along the way. One of the most significant milestones came when Skyward Dreams announced plans to launch international flights. For months, Amara worked tirelessly with her team, securing permits, negotiating contracts, and ensuring compliance with global aviation standards. The first international route connected a bustling U.S. city to a vibrant Caribbean destination, a move aimed at supporting tourism in underserved regions, while providing affordable travel options for families and students. When the inaugural flight took off, Amara stood on the tarmac watching the plane ascend into the sky with tears streaming down her face. It was a moment she'd dreamed of since childhood, one that symbolized how far she'd come and how much further she could go. But perhaps the greatest impact of Skyward Dreams wasn't in the destinations it reached, but in the people it inspired. Through initiatives like Wings of Opportunity, hundreds of young people from marginalized communities gained access to resources and mentorship they never thought possible. Maya, the 14-year-old girl who once wrote to Amara after hearing her speak, graduated from flight school 3 years later and joined Skyward Dreams as a junior pilot. On her very first day, Amara surprised her by personally welcoming her aboard and presenting her with custom wings engraved with the words "Dreams Take Flight." The gesture brought Maya to tears, and their embrace during that moment went viral, becoming yet another example of the ripple effect Amara's work created. Amara's influence extended beyond aviation. As her story continued to inspire others, she was invited to speak at prestigious events worldwide, from tech conferences to United Nations summits. Her speeches always carried the same core message: progress begins with understanding, empathy, and action. At one such event held in a grand auditorium filled with world leaders, entrepreneurs, and activists, Amara delivered a keynote address that left the audience spellbound. "When I was accused of something I didn't do simply because of how I looked, I had two choices," she began, her voice steady and clear. "I could have let anger consume me, or I could use the experience to spark change. I chose the latter, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Bias isn't just an individual problem. It's a systemic one, and if we want to build a better future, we must confront these issues head-on." She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. "Every single one of us has the power to create change. In our homes, our workplaces, our communities. Start by listening to those whose voices are often ignored. Challenge your assumptions. Lift others up even when it's inconvenient. Because when we choose kindness over judgment, inclusion over exclusion, we don't just transform industries, we transform lives." The standing ovation that followed lasted several minutes, with attendees rising to their feet in admiration. Many approached her afterward, sharing stories of how her journey had motivated them to pursue their own dreams or advocate for equality in their fields. One woman, a fellow entrepreneur from Africa, hugged Amara tightly and whispered, "You've shown us that no matter where we start, we can reach the stars if we dare to believe." Back home, Amara remained deeply connected to her roots. Despite her growing fame and responsibilities, she made time to visit local schools and community centers, reminding young people that success wasn't reserved for the privileged few. During one particularly memorable visit, a shy boy named Jamal asked her, "Do you ever get scared? Like, what if you fail?" Amara knelt down to his level, smiling warmly. "Of course I get scared," she admitted. "Failure is part of life. But here's the thing. Failure doesn't define you unless you let it. Every mistake, every setback teaches you something valuable. So don't be afraid to try, even if you might fall, because every step forward brings you closer to your dreams." Her answer earned a round of applause from the students, many of whom scribbled notes in their notebooks as if committing her words to memory. For Amara, moments like these reaffirmed why she did what she did. Success wasn't about accolades or recognition, it was about leaving the world better than she found it. As Skyward Dreams celebrated its 10th anniversary, Amara reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. From the worn-out textbook her father left behind to the sleek jets now bearing the Skyward Dreams logo, every chapter of her story was woven together by resilience, determination, and love. She organized a special gala to mark the occasion, inviting employees, partners, friends, and family to celebrate not only the airline's achievements, but also the collective effort that made them possible. During her speech at the gala, Amara took a moment to honor those who had supported her along the way. "This airline wouldn't exist without the sacrifices my mom made, working long hours to give me opportunities she never had," she said, turning to her mother, who sat beaming in the front row. "It wouldn't exist without the mentors who believed in me when I doubted myself, and it wouldn't exist without each and every one of you, the people who wake up every day committed to making Skyward Dreams a reality." She concluded with a promise. "We're not done yet. There are still skies to explore, barriers to break, and dreams to fulfill. Together we'll keep pushing boundaries, lifting others up, and proving that the sky truly is the beginning, not the end." The room erupted in cheers, with guests raising their glasses in a toast to the future. As Amara mingled with attendees afterward, she couldn't help but feel immense gratitude for the challenges that had shaped her, the lessons she'd learned, and the countless individuals who had joined her on this remarkable journey. Looking ahead, Amara knew there would be more hurdles to overcome. The aviation industry was constantly evolving, and staying ahead required relentless innovation and adaptability. But she faced the future with unwavering optimism, knowing that every challenge presented an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and kinder. Whether expanding routes, launching sustainable initiatives, or mentoring the next generation of leaders, Amara vowed to remain true to the principles that had guided her from the start: integrity, inclusivity, and purpose. Years later, as she stood on stage delivering a keynote speech at an international aviation summit, Amara shared a simple truth that encapsulated everything she'd learned. Success isn't measured by how high you fly, but by how many people you lift along the way. Those words echoed through the hall, resonating with everyone present. They weren't just a reflection of her journey. They were a call to action for anyone daring enough to dream big and bold. And so Amara Johnson continued to soar, not just as a pioneering entrepreneur, but as a beacon of hope, resilience, and possibility. Her story served as a reminder that no matter where you come from, or what obstacles stand in your path, the sky is never the limit. With courage, compassion, and determination, anything is possible.